All set? Okay, we're rolling. Ready?
Oh, wait, let me just get my water.
Oh, I got one right here. Oh, you got your water.
No, I got myself.
Do you have an order?
Yeah, actually, we have Council on Aging is up first, and then we have Community Center and Recreation. We haven't yet seen someone from cemeteries. If library does show up, then I may jump them out of the way.
Okay.
That's would be a commission center.
I got 1, 2, 3. We're ready to roll.
Wait, where's that?
Chris, what page number on this one?
292.
290?
292?
Thank you. What page is that?
293.
It's after 291.
Way back there.
Get the 293 stop.
So we are reconvened. If you want to just give us a thumbnail of what you have going, and then we'll just get to questions.
Sure. I do have extra copies of my standard questions. I don't know if anyone needs those.
We
We did pass them out.
Okay.
We have those. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
So I guess I'll just highlight, I'll start with my expenditures budget. It's a very minor increase, 0.29%. The biggest change is a reallocation of funds. So we have, for a long period of time, done a program called Supper Club. It was an every Monday night program, and we hire entertainment. So that was a big portion of our budget. While Judy Wilson was director, she cut that down to 1 Monday per month due to lower attendance. We've seen the attendance really increase back on that 1 Monday a month, and we substituted a lunch for the other 3 Mondays. So there's still a warm meal and a social outing for folks, but we just don't pay entertainment. So that saved us a chunk of money there, and so I was happy to have the opportunity to reallocate that to some other areas in our budget, specifically to our training and professional development line item. We have wonderful dedicated staff. We're really in need of more computer and technology training in particular, so I would like to be able to fund some extensive training in that area. We have some new staff members, obviously myself included, and I'd like to have more training on aging and dementia. And then you'll notice a section for volunteer training. We have over 100 volunteers. They do roughly the equivalent of 3 full-time employees. Many of them do work where they are alone with seniors, so it's not in the office. They're the only ones seeing certain people, and we want to make sure that they know how to respond to emergencies, recognize cognitive decline so that they can point that out to us and we can respond appropriately. So that's one component, and then the other area I increased significantly was in advertising. We reach a lot of people. Our newsletter is very successful. We mail that out to around 2,500 people every other month, but it reaches the same 2,500 people. And as we know, we have about 5,700 people over 60 and over who we serve per statute. And I'd like to be reaching more of those folks, so I'd like to be able to advertise some of our bigger or newer events in vehicles that require payment. So those are my 2 increases there. I don't know if anyone has questions on that before I talk about salary and wages changes.
Overall, it's low, the total increase. So
Yes.
you've had some offsets. Yeah, okay.
I think we should just go through the whole thing and then
Yeah.
we'll
Okay.
do questions.
So then, again, the notable change here is for the enhancement of services, requested the additional town-funded 8 hours for our program specialist position. In my standard question answers, I gave an outline of what the person in that position does. It's a position that involves a lot of work. That work cannot be done in 27 hours. Those initial 27 hours are grant-funded, so the additional 8 would come from the town. It's already a benefited position, so that's not in addition to the town burden. And even with those additional 8 hours, because of the difference between my salary and Judy's salary, we had some wiggle room, so even with those additional 8 hours, it's a sub 2% total salary and wages increase. So I guess that's the highlight. I don't know if anyone wants me to go more into
Thank you.
detail.
Any questions from the board? John?
Yeah, this is actually drilling down a bit.
Sure.
I've noticed, there's a letter to the editor, but I mean, I've heard some other people talking about it, that there's been a reduction in the busing, like the CVS and a couple of other places. Is that driven by a loss of a grant or by reprioritizing the money that had been spent there somewhere else?
I'm really glad you brought that up, actually. We have not decreased any services. I know there was a letter to the editor. I'm happy to talk about it now or at a selectmen's meeting or any appropriate time, really. There was a change in that we had passengers on our vans making requests to go places that were unscheduled. People wanted to go to their nail appointments, their hair appointments, CVS, et cetera, and our drivers were going there, but we didn't know about it. And it was a really big safety and liability concern for us when we don't know where our drivers are and we don't know where our passengers are. So the policy was to go to scheduled locations. The scheduled locations have not changed. So we're still going and trying to meet those essential services. So there's been no change except for more strict adherence to a policy, but no
And
change.
this is the right place to ask the question.
Sure.
There was no budget change, that we haven't diverted money that was going there to someplace else, or lost
Correct.
any grant money, or
Absolutely.
anything like that. It wasn't,
No change.
Other questions from the board? Ed? No?
Just want to say, great job, great work.
Thank you very much.
happy to have it.
Our side? John?
No, thank you very much.
We are all set. Thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Sorry to make it so grueling.
So Emily, you didn't need the reinforcements.
I would like to take a second. I do have some
were
very
so good
lovely,
to her just
dedicated
not to have
board
the
meter
reinforcements
members.
come
That's the case of fight brought up. Broke out.
So we're gonna stay for Carol's presentation.
No questions.
They can shovel the
Thank you very much.
driveway.
Okay, next we have the community center.
Does anyone need a snack? Cutie, anything? Just checking. You all work so hard.
Oh, God.
Here
We
we
don't
go.
have any questions for you.
Here we go.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Jamie.
page are
Carolyn
we on?
Carey, Community Center Director. I'm gonna go through mine pretty quickly, and I do have it on a PowerPoint.
86.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. The first page you see is exactly what you have generated from the town. Thank you, Carol. This is the budget. This is salary and wage, which is down negative 1.65%. I can address that in that when we decided to open for holidays and Sundays, I added 2 people. I had no idea how it was going to turn out. I didn't know what we were going to need. I have gone in and assessed the situation on a very regular basis and feel like we can do it with the one person, in addition to the people already in the building. Eric has 2. There's a custodian, so just having 1, I don't want to use any extra money from the town that we don't need to. So that's where that has come down. I told you I'd go fast, I'm sorry. The next is the budget that is the line item budget. And I do have it on, if you flip to the next, like, 3rd slide where it says budget justification. That would be helpful, Jamie, thank you. So I'm going to go through these quickly. What I did this year, I had been taking some courses to try and be better at accounting and management, just for my my own self-improvement, and I was learning about the importance of budgeting correctly and specific line items. So you're going to see some changes. You know, there's a line item that goes down about 30%. It didn't technically go down. I've actually put it in the line item that it belongs in. So I think it will be helpful going forward when we look at exactly what it costs to run the community center. So the first one is for training and professional development. We do have an AED machine inside the building. We are required to have people trained on that. That does include myself and everyone who works there. In addition to that, we have software that runs the building, does the bookings. We have software for the door counters, so all of that, we train the people that come in. Printing, much like Emily said, only much more eloquent she said it, we do try and reach so many people. We try and reach everyone in the community. We have a booklet that we put out. In addition to that, we go through the Chronicle and put our calendar in there. We do monthly calendars, but we're trying to reach out and get as much information published, and we are doing more on our website and Facebook and those things as well. So the next one says the computer maintenance and service, and when I originally put in this budget, it was to lease a computer, a copier, I'm sorry. The truth is that I found out that I was paying more when I lease because it's much like a car. If you drive a certain amount of miles, you're great, a lease is perfect for you. We make far too many copies. So I researched it with the help of Carol in the police department, and it's actually much cheaper. We're looking at the same one the police department used. It was much cheaper than doing a lease. So I did research that. I thought I was gonna go the lease. I thought it would be the most cost-effective. It is not. Advertising, again, just trying to get the word out there about everything that we do. Telephone, this is another one that was taken out of a line item. It used to be in other maintenance and repairs. I thought you should see, when I have the telephone in my budget, that's for the entire building. Council on Aging, Youth and Rec, Veterans Affairs, so I'm not spending that much. Purchase services, again, NOSSIT disposal, it's picking up for everyone. Serve Safe, I'm not gonna go through them all, so. Office supplies, $3,248. That has not moved. It's exactly the same as it was. Office equipment, again, another thing I find funny, my office equipment consists of having tables and chairs. That's what I need to rent the rooms. You'll see pretty soon when town meeting comes, we're running really short on chairs over there. So we want everyone to get a chair at town meeting. So the electric, gas, water, those are up significantly, and those are based on actual numbers. So in the next graph, if you don't mind, I'm just jumping ahead, Jamie. I made a little note. Here's my pie chart. The next chart is a bar graph, because I know some people prefer. 74% of this budget is just utilities. Those utilities obviously cover the building itself, but Youth and Rec, COA, Channel 18, Cemetery, Veterans Affairs. If you add telephone and general repairs to the building, because I do the repairs for everyone, it becomes 82% of my budget. If you add the outside grounds, which is not in the highway departments, that's another 3%, making 85% of my budget something that we all utilize. So the next one is truly just the exact same thing. I just made a little bar graph because I don't know how you like stuff, so. I can run through my questions if you'd like. So my budget is up, and that is solely because of things like having to buy a copier. When you have a small budget, the increase looks pretty dramatic when you have one line item like that. And also because 30% to my budget went up with like the electrical, gas, those kind of things. So those are things I can't control. The next, so the next one just explained how I separated everything out. Am I requesting any extra hours? I'm not exactly. I have requested that the 5 extra hours for the executive assistant, those hours are currently in the DPW budget, and I was asking they be moved back into my budget. That just makes it a cleaner budgeting process, in my opinion. And the only other thing is that my hours went from 35 to 40, which was a contractual thing. So the last request, we're hoping to close the building at 9 p.m. It will have public hearings. It will impact very, 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 very few people. But it will save me and the town a significant amount of money, in my opinion. So the chart that you see below is based on if I'm allowed to close at 9 p.m. instead of 10. I have 89 hours that the building is open. The town budget is for 59 hours. That does not include mine, but I am there at some of the same times. So in addition to the community center budget, we do use weight room attendants to help us, because they are, and when we're in the building, there's not a separate weight room. There are no overlapping hours in the community center at all. So that's where the additional hours are in there, and that still leaves us short on hours that the building is staffed by just myself or me with a custodian. So that brings us to, do I need a fully funded budget? I do, I really, really do. So There are no expenses I could defer. I guess if you wanted to put off buying the chairs, but I truly believe at this town meeting, you're gonna see, I'm gonna be borrowing chairs from town buildings, with that busy, and we're almost 20 years old. We haven't had this line item before, so we're, you know, they've done a great service to the town, those chairs. And then you asked just for where our fees come from, program fees, passport fees, building use, copiers. I'm not looking at changing any of the fees at this time, and there are no articles from the community center. And if I could just leave you with one thing, or I hope I'm leaving you soon. I love you all, but you make me nervous out here. So this year, I wanted to just mention that I had 7 obituaries. I know that sounds like a funny thing, but when you think about your obituary, what goes in it? Your accomplishments, what you've done, what was important. 7 different people, and that was what was sent to me. Those weren't ones I sought out. All mentioned how much the community center meant to them. So I really think it's important that you know that this building it's important far more than we could ever, ever, ever imagine. You know, you don't list when you're passed away that you shopped at Stop and Shop. So clearly it meant something to these people, and those are without even looking to see what it's done. So, okay, that's my big spiel about the community center.
Questions?
Should I go?
I read a statement this weekend that the world's shortest obituary, Doug died. I'm interested in the passport fees. No, don't look at anything. I'm on applaud. That's the service that people are taking advantage of. $14,000 is more than I thought would happen. But
Very much so. We do get certified, both Sam and I are certified, and the state sets the amount that we can charge. It's $35 that comes to the town, and $10 additional if you get a picture taken. That one we do set.
no, great job, Kelly.
Thank you.
Ed?
No.
Don?
Yeah, actually, mine's more of a comment. Strap yourself in, it's gonna be brutal. I'm gonna commend you for
Are we taping, Jamie?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the way that you've actually managed this. I mean, you did point out that you had anticipated, you originally started out with 2 people for the extended hours, and you're able to get away with just 1. Most people wouldn't give back to 1 person. It's great that you're doing that. The other thing I just want to take note of is we've been talking for a long time about extending hours. I see that you're pulling back the nighttime hours, but that's still an hour later than Chatham closes with their community
Correct.
center. So
Correct.
the way that some of these places were funding what they were doing is that they never were open as long as we were, and they were able to go sideways instead of vertically within a day. I think that this is very coherent, and it addresses a lot of the concerns from the community in a very responsible way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just,
Chris?
Carolyn, can you remind people that we did open on Sundays, but what part of the facility is actually open on Sundays? Just
Sure. We are open on Sundays and certain holidays, and we are open from 10 in the morning till 3, and it's just the weight room and the gym and game room. And I'm sure Eric will tell you about that part. But mine is the weight room, and it is open, and we average about 37 people on a Sunday.
I'm guessing the game room is a primo destination point.
I think the gym more so, truthfully, the wide-open gym, yeah.
Questions?
Great job with your budget.
Thank
Great
you.
job managing your budget, and for all the extra that you do. We all know you do plenty of extra work. Could you just clarify the salary and wages line item? It's $135,750, projected actual $118,668, and then it says town administrator basically $160 with a 17% increase. So that would be $511,900, and maybe that's Chris's.
what page you on, Mike?
288.
287.
287.
287.
I got 288, but see 288.
288.
But it says budget projection 30201.
So I can tell you what I think. It's those 5 hours for myself changing, 5 hours for Sam coming from the executive assistant, coming from the DPW, and I was regraded last. So I think that's what I know, but I can't answer for Chris.
I'm really not questioning it either. I just.
No, it's fine.
Clarification. It says projected actual 118,668, and then it says town administrator 158,837, with a 17.1% difference.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the projected actual, that's just based upon.
Could you just use the
Come
microphone,
up
please?
here.
Don't bring Richard with you.
The projected actual is not used in that calculation of the percent increase. If I were you, I'd ignore that column
Okay.
completely. But she's exactly right, that the 10 hours in total is going to increase that line significantly, and that's what the increase was, but in addition to the contractual increases.
Thank you. The only other question would be on the hours. That's Carolyn's decision to make, right? In administration, does the board need to take this up and vote on it? Closing at 9 instead of 10?
I think that generally, isn't that administered by your, the committee there?
The facilities committee, so truthfully, the facilities committee, and then I always come to you, we'll have a public hearing, so I bring you information that the public said, but I'm honestly telling you, we send out 200 applications, and we went through and saw how many people are actually after 9 PM, and it's like 5, and some of those are one-time uses, and if we have to open like till 10 on 1 or 2 nights, it's still gonna be more cost-effective to close. But I'm gonna open it up to the public and hear, maybe I'm totally off base, but I don't think so.
I support it because you recommend it. I just wanted to make sure we didn't have to take an action on it.
Okay.
Question?
I just want to, again, congratulate you on the job you do. You're doing a great job, and to Michael's point, you're always putting in more hours than you required to, so really, thanks for excellent job. The only other question I have, though, are there solar panels on the community center?
No, the roof was too old.
Oh.
It is in this phase 4 that they're looking at doing the parking lot, which is.
Canopies.
The parking lot
Oh,
canopies.
the canopies,
That-
right,
That's one of the things
yeah.
that's being looked
Yeah.
at.
It's crazy how expensive it is.
Questions?
No.
Questions?
I don't dare.
Well, no, that's not true.
As you know, I'm there 2, 3, 4 times a week.
I do.
And I was just curious as to what the weight room revolving fund, the $62,500,
That's the
what
money-
is that?
That's the money you pay. That's how much the people pay.
Just him.
That's what it goes into.
That's-
It goes into a revolving fund.
That's
and
the
we-
annual income?
So, yes.
Okay, and that goes into the revolving.
It changes based on how many people sign up.
Oh,
And
sure.
that money is used to pay for those people that we talked about and the equipment in the weight room. A new piece is coming on next week, so, I know, excited.
Thank you. Good job.
I'll
Just a
put you in
quick
my
question.
arbitrary.
Caroline, again, I commend you on the work you do, and I'm over there at odd hours, morning, afternoon, late at night, and every time you're there. So, you must have a room in the back somewhere.
I'm telling you, Mike.
But, you do a great job, and everybody I talk around town, it's a wonderful place. The one question I do have, it's not been, where does the cultural center budget show up? Because I know you do a lot of over there also. That's not part of any of this budget, right?
It is not. It
Okay.
has, well, it's not funded by the town portion. It was the cultural center has been subsidized
Right.
before it was ever a cultural center.
Right.
But the only monies we use, oh, go ahead.
Maybe.
I'll help you. In terms of, we have the 125,000 for the subsidy, so that money is used to kind of pay the utilities and so on. And then we do have a revolving account that was established 2 years ago or 3 years ago at this point for the cultural center, and that generates about $150,000 now is what generates, and all that goes into the operation of the building.
But who's the manager of that budget? Who's
It's co-managed by
Myself and Sean Levy.
Levy.
And where does that show up if I want to see the details of the expenses and stuff?
We need to put together a little bit more of a detailed report for folks, but it's two parts in the budget. One is one of the capital requests is the $125,000 subsidy.
Subsidy, yeah.
And then on the chart of all the revolving accounts, that's on there.
Okay, Thank you. And it
I'm
goes
happy
great
to provide two. I do have a graph for that.
for the cultural center.
I would be happy to pass that to you.
Yeah,
Eric,
we
and
can distribute
schedule
around,
it,
we do a
so-
budget.
But I do that
Yeah.
as well.
Again,
so
thanks a lot. You do a great job at the cultural center too, Carol.
Thank you.
Well, just only because you broached the subject, I'm just curiosity
Sure.
on the cultural center end of it. How we doing with the artist shack? We getting nibbles on those?
Oh, I don't think you'll have to worry about having them full.
Okay.
When I was in front of you talking about how we wanted to advertise for it, big mistake. Our phones are, they're gonna be popular, I do believe, but I believe wholeheartedly that before you open something, you should have policies and procedures in place, because it's really hard to go backwards. So they are being built. There was an RFP that went out.
Yes,
and-
I've seen, yeah.
Yes, so they are building those, and we are working on, we'll be back before the selectmen with what we perceive to be policies and procedures for those. But yes, the Seaside Marketplace at Saquatucket Marina will be functioning soon.
Progress noted, thank you.
And the only reason why for the delay is that the board has a policy, anytime you discuss fees, it has to have a public hearing, so we did advertise for the public hearing. Do you remember when that's?
I do not off
I
the top
don't
of my head.
recall, but it will be in
It's
March.
further down, we won't.
I have, the only,
I just like to make a request. Can you just find out how much it's costing to build that group of products, buildings, and then try to adjust the fee that you want to charge so that over 5 years, 10 years, or whatever, it's covered?
I can say with certainty, we're already on that, Angelo. I was so hoping you would ask that question.
Thank you. Setup, I think, yeah.
I know, thanks for that.
I guess my only questions have to do with the general, how do we handle revolving accounts and what do they do and that kind of stuff? Because we're doing a lot of budgetary stuff through revolving accounts instead of having it in budgets and going through. I don't know if 100% of the weight money goes back into the weight room or not.
Yes, none goes to the general fund currently.
Right, yeah. And that's quite a bit of revenue. So that's just part of that discussion rather than bog down this budget. Any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll
Try
see
to
you
bring some
again.
enthusiasm next time, right?
Recreation is next.
You think he needs help?
Yeah, look at the size of them.
Thank you. Eric Beebe, Recreation Director. I will kind of go through our question sheet here. We have 3 sections to our budget. The first being seasonal salary and wages.
Page 312.
Thank you.
There is an increase from 215,988 to 228,507. This is because of staying ahead of the minimum wage and staying competitive with summer staff, especially lifeguards. The more we could give them, the easier it is to get them and getting quality lifeguards. Also with this, it wouldn't be that much of an increase, but we're seeing a lot of return staff, which is a good indication as well. So they're up on the higher steps now, but eventually there's a turnaround in there. Year-round salary and wage increase from 250,115 to 264,615. That is due to contractual obligations as well as a full year of the Sunday staffing. And we do have 2 staff. There's 2 open gym attendants from 10 to 3. We've kept it at 2. We've seen the numbers steadily increasing for open gym as people have gotten wind of it. So we're seeing anywhere from 20 to 25 kids show up, but we don't want to cut down to 1 because we never know it's not a pre-registration program, so we never know if it's going to be 40 people or 10 showing up that day. Our expenses are level funded from FY19 at 57,575. Every line item is level funded. And our total budget goes from 523,678 to 550,697 for a 5.2% increase. We are not adding any personnel or hours this year other than the Sunday staff that's been in there since FY19. There's really no expenses that could be deferred without impacting the services we're offering, especially seasonal in the summer. There are no pricing or fee changes proposed for this season, And as far as revolving fund, we are trying to increase our cap from 125 to 175. I know revolving fund is a hot topic at the moment. We've had a revolving fund for quite a while, and it's very important to us to have one. We run all our programs through it. We do budgeting and planning for each program that we run to find out how many kids we need to sustain the program, at what price, how many staff we could bring in, what equipment we need. We go through program to program. It's especially important in the summer, with our summer camp growing every year. We try to increase programming every year. That's why the cap increases. The more programs we put in, the more money that's spent and the more money that comes in. We've increased our programming and program registrants 3 times in the last 6 years, I believe. So that requires the need for a higher cap in our revolving fund. So that's my very quick gist of our budget, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Larry?
None for me right now.
Ed?
No.
None?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Had trouble saying that one, huh?
I did. I was choking on it. Actually, I'm going to go off on your original comments. It's about you because you're in front of us, but it's about everybody that's on that list of the revolving funds.
Sure.
If those operations that you were expending the money from the revolving fund were in the budget,
Yep.
there would be a level of detail. We'd be able to tell what level you were spending on a person, or T-shirts, or whatever. We are no less responsible for deciding priorities as a town just because something comes out of a revolving fund than we would if it came out of a direct fund. There is no level of detail. There is a generic purpose for the fund, and then there's the appropriateness of it being within that purpose.
Sure.
But there is not, you can't take money that was for office supplies and spend it on the telephones. So when we get to the bigger discussion, to me, that is the discussion. Is like, who's got oversight, not who has responsibility
Yep.
for the money, but who has oversight over it. And we don't ever get any detail about what's coming out of those funds. It's just generically harbors or golf, or in your case, recreation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't feel like it was ever anybody's intent, because I think I was around when that fund started the last time, when it first started. I don't think it was anybody's intent to obscure exactly what it was being spent on. It was a mechanism so that you could get uniforms or something based on how many kids were coming in.
Sure.
But as this is burgeoned, and now you're going up the ladder on 6 figures.
Yep.
At some point in time, we got to take a look at, who's responsible for, not the fund, but who's responsible for the budgeting within that.
I'll just throw in there on that, and I go back to even before you.
Yep. Yeah.
And we were, we really wanted the flexibility at that time on the Recreation Commission, Youth and Recreation Commission, to be able to create a new program without having to have that in the budget. People come in and say they want to start a checkers tournament. We wanted to oblige them, and it wouldn't have time. It would take a full year to get it into the budget. So that's was part of the advantage of the revolving fund, to take care of that, and then as it got established, you could then maybe consider putting it in the budget. So maybe that's part of the discussion.
Yeah, one of the things, so the board obviously brought this up the other night, and we've had some discussion internally, and I'll give Carol credit, because I think it was a great idea on her part. She's come up with that each of those responsible parties that have the amount would prepare a quarterly report that would be sent to administration, so that would be reviewed. Certainly, if I get a quarterly report on all the different activities that are going through those accounts, then I can share that obviously with the selectmen. So we are looking at that. I think that's a fair question, that how do we raise the level of oversight, I think was a term that was used, and I wasn't really following that. I assumed that the department heads were enough oversight, but I agree that administration and finance should have a little bit additional oversight, and I think doing this quarterly report and having that be reviewed and shared, obviously if the board wants that shared, we could certainly do that on each case.
And you do understand that when we sit here on this Saturday,
Oh, yeah.
and we get to ask everybody, say, you're doing a great job, and this line item and that line item does this and does that. We have no such discussions on the revolving fund. It's, mature programs are also in those funds. So at some point or another, you gotta be able to say, all right, how much does it really cost you and where are you spending the money? But which is not something, because that came up to my attention when we were thinking about the cemetery commission approving expenditures, because those were appointed individuals. There's two levels of responsible. One of them has to do with oversight outside of the program, so that somebody's at the wheel.
Yeah, we acknowledge that and think it's a good suggestion.
Larry has a question.
Yeah,
Or a
thank you,
comment.
Eric. On your table on recap of revenue,
Mhm.
do you also have a column that you can provide us on recap of expenses for each of those?
I could, yeah, I could provide that to you.
Okay.
That's no problem. Yep.
Be good, thank you.
Question?
set. Thank
All
you,
set?
Eric.
Questions?
No, just great programs that
Thank
you
you.
run.
Questions in the gallery? Mark?
Do you have the answer to his question?
Well, I can provide you
He's
the
gonna provide it,
expenses.
so-
Yeah, yep,
We'll make sure we get a copy.
yep, that's no problem.
Questions? Questions?
No,
Just a comment, great job, Eric. Everybody talked about your great program, and in talking with Eric earlier, I didn't realize his department writes parking tickets for the beach. I didn't realize that.
People know me now.
So that's where they. So that's
Sorry
what,
about that.
collector,
Right, right.
Forgot about that, sorry, Eric.
so that's
He
where.
has to
that's
lean
where your
over to
tickets
the
came-
window to tap on it.
That's where his tickets came from.
Questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm good, thank you
Okay.
very much.
Just a comment.
Yep.
You know, my other activity with the town is through the Cranberry Festival.
We've heard of that.
We do a lot of interaction with the recreation
Sure.
and youth department, and Eric and his staff always are responsive, come up with solutions when we need something, allow us to help out and make minor improvements to principally electrical systems to run the events, and it's a great working relationship.
I mean, we heard before about different departments working out of that building up there on Oak Street, and how surprised they are at how successful it is, but back in the 90s, when we wrote that program, we knew what was coming, build it and they will come, and they certainly have. So
Yep, absolutely.
it's been that way ever since. Okay, you're all set, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Eric.
Who's on tap here?
Next would be Robin from cemeteries, who's the next one?
78.
Cemetery 278, thank you.
Boy, everybody knew that number, huh?
Have an agenda, it's actually easy.
Did you bring your commission with you, Rob?
What?
Did you bring your commission with you?
Well, Cindy was supposed to come, but she is sick.
Okay, we hope she feels better.
Yeah. So I have a little packet for each one of you that I'm passing around. Everyone has one? I answered the questions, and I'll just go through them really quick on the budget. The difference between the FY '19 and FY '20 is my salaries increased 6.2% due to our SEIU contract. The water utilities increased 6.16% due to, we lost a lot of trees, and we had to replace a lot of trees in some of the cemeteries, and we are now watering them, and until they're established, we'll be using a little bit more water. I had to add a telephone. I had a telephone when I was at the DPW, and then when I moved over to the community center, it was switched over to a cell phone, and it was being paid out of Foster's budget, but now it's going to be out of my own budget. And the dues, subscription, and travel had increased 7.29%. I drive to all the cemeteries, and there's been a obviously recent increase in deaths if you don't read the newspaper.
In adding or reducing personnel, I did request for another personnel, part-time person in the office. I am the only one in my department that handles burials, and when I'm on vacation or I'm sick, it doesn't matter, my phone rings and I have to answer the phone. So I am on 24/7, 365. So the funeral homes call me whether it's a Sunday, Saturday night, Christmas, whatever. So I am on call all the time, and God forbid something happens to me, I don't think anyone knows how to actually do my job. So it'd be nice to train somebody or
Town's
cross-train.
over 300 years old, we'll survive.
Okay. What are the top priorities was to add a part-time employee. I know it's been removed from the budget, and I know that's tough times, so that being said, we're moving on. Recap of revenues anticipated in their resources. We've taken about at least $1,000 in our revolving account every year from the sale of lots and internment fees. If we get the pet burial ground revolving account, we're expected to take in about 40 a year in that revolving account. We are proposing new fees if the revolving account does happen, and those are in there for the pet burial ground. Those are new to the town. And that's about it for that
Questions?
part of the budget. Do you have any questions on? I'm gonna do the pet burial ground at the end, so if you wanna,
I don't, Nina, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Robin.
all right.
Pet Bear Ground budget, or?
No, my plan at the end,
I
because
think
that's,
that,
I'm going in, I wanna go in
I know
order
that
by
the
articles.
FinCom had some questions too in regards to the cemetery rules and regs, so if you want to bring those up.
Yeah, that
I
was
actually
next
think I
on
want
my
to talk to the
thing.
commission about that, the cemetery commission. That's a question for them, I think, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
Larry?
No, I'm fine.
So, you're out of town on vacation for 2 weeks.
I went to Ireland two years ago for 10 days, and people called me in Ireland, so they would send me photographs on the phone, and then I would send them back information, and I was coordinating with them about burials, so.
But there's nobody
No.
here that does the mark out.
Well, the guys did the mark out, so I'd send stuff to Jim on his phone to tell him to mark it out, but the guys do not sell lots
Yeah, oh, okay.
or anything like that. So if there was a person who had passed away, who does not have a lot, and I'm not here, nobody else knows how to sell lots or does sell lots.
Okay.
Don?
Yeah, this has nothing to do with how good a job you're doing. It's just a question. How long ago was the position that you're in a part-time position?
When I started in 2004, it was part-time. I went to, I think in 2000,
It's been since I've been here, so within the last 5 years, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I think we moved it to full-time.
no, I think it's longer than that.
And that's, I understand what Ed was driving at,
Yeah.
but that's what a lot of people who come to me over the past couple of years have said, actually, but particularly, though, as it relates to a part-time additional employee.
Right.
Because I'm not looking at that within the context of this year versus next year,
Right.
as much as I am over the period of 5 years. And we've gone, then, if we look at, let's say we approve this, we've gone from a part-time to a full-time to 1.5-time employee.
Right.
Covering it. Has there been that dramatic a change in the operation in terms of how, over the last 10 years?
Well, as you know, the population is aging, and as
Well,
the-
that doesn't mean they're all being put in the ground. So has
they're
there
not
been,
being all put into the ground.
has there been a dramatic increase in the actual activities of the cemetery?
Yes.
In the last 10 years?
Absolutely, since I started, yes.
And
So
by
when
what-
I first started, we were probably doing about 60 burials. Now we do about 100, and it's probably going to increase.
Ed,
If I could,
you may.
what were your hours when you first started?
They were 20, and then they moved to 25, I think, my second year.
Yeah, I
And they
think,
were 25 for quite some time, and then they moved to 30, and then they moved to 35.
So at 20, though, you were certainly part-time, but you were over the level that gave you benefits.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in terms of expense. And other than burials, in terms of work over, since you started, there was the whole justifying up lot line project, the building of the expansion to Evergreen, the addition, the cleaning up and expanding the Kelly Cemetery. So there's been quite a number of projects
Right.
that hadn't been done by the
We did
previous-
4 expansions since I started. So a lot of towns are running out of cemetery space. We are one of the few towns that actually has cemetery space. So just recently in the town of Chatham, they've had 4 deaths, and they had no lots to sell them. So we sold them, of course, at a premium, because they're out of towners, so they have to pay a different rate, but they do not currently have any cemetery spaces available for sale.
Better die quick then.
Burn me to a crisp and spread me a
Any more questions from the board? Yes.
What is the revenue number for lot sales every year, roughly?
It's probably around, I would say, high 50s.
Okay. If you could get me an exact.
Yep,
that'd
I'll
be
get you
good.
that exact number.
And then as far as the part-time employee goes, which I would not have supported it
Yeah,
myself.
and it's already off.
But I do understand the vacation time, which the marriage between cemetery and DPW made a lot of sense to me. Robin being moved out of there and the support staff being taken away from her at that point, I think we should readdress that or look at that.
Yeah, we can look and see if there's an opportunity for cross-training with Council on Aging. I mean, there's
Our-
still other resources that are there.
Yeah, because our boards have secretaries. I mean, our planning board has people that take notes. I mean, they have support. So this is a department head with absolutely no support, which I believe you had when you were at DPW.
Yes.
Because there was people there to answer the phone for you and whatnot. So
Yeah.
that move, to me, still is a little funny, but I'd like to look at that.
Questions?
So I would say that it's very difficult to not have some sort of backup. I mean, you should be able to take vacation and not be getting phone calls, never mind the topic that you're dealing with is pretty heavy, not easy, so, you know, I think that we should figure out a way to examine how there's backup for her, for
And I guess
Robin.
on that question, where we are using other revolving funds for people, why isn't there 15 hours built into this revolving fund to get somebody that could learn how to do
We could look at
those
that.
things?
We can look at that.
I mean, if that's what you're doing in other departments. Andrew?
I was just thinking you could take turns of each of the selectmen taking a week in a row.
I think that's a great idea.
and Going in for it.
I'd rather
That'd be
send them to
great.
Ireland myself, but.
As long as I don't become a consumer.
Are there any, do you have any volunteers? People who come to,
No, and it's, sometimes when you deal with death records, and that's private information, and I don't know that you would want volunteers to be meeting people. I meet people now sometimes, and their circumstances are pretty bad, either it's a drug overdose or a terrible accident. I don't know that you would want volunteers meeting those people.
yeah, I wasn't suggesting that, but in
Oh.
terms of
Support.
answering the phone,
Oh, yeah.
that kind of thing.
Well, now I don't have a desk phone, I only have a cell phone.
Okay.
John?
Thanks, Robin. Just one quick question.
Yep.
It's not the one you expect, so. You mentioned 50,000 in revenue from lot sales.
Right.
And you also mentioned 100 burials. So I'm just doing the math in my head, and I'm assuming that those burials are already prepaid burials, too.
No, they pay a $100 interment fee. We don't dig any graves. Those are all subcontracted out, so the DPW does not dig graves. So when we do a burial, each time we do an interment, it's a $100 fee.
No, I meant, you said you generated $50,000 in revenues,
But $50,000 probably in lot sales.
lot sales.
Yeah, yeah.
And then some interment fees, too.
Right, interment fees as well.
But a lot of
Ed?
people have bought their plot ahead of time.
Yeah, they buy their
Yeah,
plots.
well, that's what I'm getting at, because if I do the math,
Yep.
you know, divide 50,000 by your $800 a grave, you don't come up with what you said you would for 100 burials. So
Right.
I'm
A lot of people have,
pre-permit, that's all, that's That's all I was.
I'm not everyone who gets buried today, I have to sell them a lot. Some of them have family lots that we go in. So if somebody comes to me and they have an 8-grave family lot and 3 are used, I have to go out there and figure out where the 3 existing burials are. Then I send that to the funeral home. They look at it. Then they choose which space the person is going to be buried in. Then I mark it out, and then I usually call the funeral home back or whoever their digger is and tell them where the lot is.
Thanks. I was just trying to see what your average of yearly revenue is, about 50 grand. Thanks, Rob.
Question?
Good.
I guess I'll let you know that the Finance Committee Thursday night, 2 nights ago, did vote to approve your cemetery arboretum project, to support that. And on the rules and regs, we voted to support it with the amendment to
Right.
take out those portions.
Mr. Chairman, I thought that the FinCom did have a request, though, about on the Arboretum project. What was the
Yeah,
what did
I
the
just-
software cover?
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
what was
We
the
did have the
follow-up?
question. Yeah.
Just while she's here.
Yeah, I was actually going to go one at a time. Can we go one at a time?
Well,
I just
to
wanted
answer,
to the rules.
because I was the one dissenting
Right.
vote, it was a
Right.
6-to-1 vote. I was the one dissenting vote because I was misunderstood
Right.
about the Arboretum, the mapping software. I've since spoken with Robin, and I just assume table that discussion to a better audience. And I don't want to get it, that'll tie up way too much time, in my opinion.
Well, I think maybe
mean,
if
she wants to
Robin
go over
could
her
at least do an
Arboretum.
overview of what that is, so folks know.
Yeah,
what-
Oh, sure,
just
you can do
because
that
if they
if you want,
saw
yeah.
our thing and they're watching this for
Yeah.
some reason, you can at least tell us what this mapping software does.
All right, can I just go to the rules and regs real quick? I just want to do an overview on them. And I know there's only 4 things that are being changed. I know that you guys had concern about the removal of Christmas decorations, which Dawn actually brought up and thought that they should be holiday decorations, to be politically correct. The reason why they wanted to do that is because when we have storms during the wintertime,
Who's they?
the commission,
Okay?
the decorations blow all over the cemetery. And just when I was there after the windstorm that was this past week, there was things that had blown into the pond, the lily pond at Island Pond, and a couple other places around the cemetery. It's not that they don't want people to have decorations up, it's just when they're out there for 2 months or 2.5 months during the winter months, they don't stay on their graves. They end up blowing all over the place when we have storms and stuff. And they just wanted to put a date that they posted at each cemetery so that the people know that this is the date we're requesting you to have these things removed by.
So on my point of view, I would rather do a public education
Okay.
program, and I would rather get more help for DPW to clean up than I would to infringe on this, from
Okay.
my own point of view.
All right, well, I'm just letting you know why they voted it that way. The other things were to change, obviously, we have to remove the Harwich Center Cemetery off of our list of town cemeteries, and my office is no longer at 273 Queen Anne Road, it's at,
So we voted to approve that article
Okay.
with those changes.
okay?
Any other questions?
Just to build on what you just said, if you put in here, in one of the regulations, that it is recommended that Christmas decorations or decorations be.
Holiday decoration?
Holiday decorations be removed after 2 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever.
Yeah, that's
That-
part of public education. There
part
could
of
even be
education.
signage going into the cemetery.
So you just put that in, rather than demand it.
Right.
Demand, yeah. Any other questions? Thank you for coming in. You want to say thank you?
Thank
Just-
you very much.
Not done yet.
Oh, we got more
The
questions.
software on the Arboretum.
Yeah.
You just cut
I
her
wasn't finished,
short.
but
I'm sorry.
We didn't even touch that.
He was kicking me out, but I wasn't ready to go.
I thought we were fine on that.
Well, just one comment that
Point of order.
Don leaned over and pointed out, you know, the difference between calling it Christmas decorations as opposed to holiday. You know, it's not just the PC, but it should be just decorations.
Right.
Because, you know, somebody
Pumpkins.
could go out on December 20th and put something there that's just a decoration. It's not a holiday
Right.
decoration. So does that get to stay there forever?
Yeah.
But because it, you know,
Whatever.
A lot of stuff to it, isn't it?
Well,
You wouldn't be able to enforce it
Unless
if
it's
you just
Fourth
said
of July.
Christmas.
Yeah.
yeah, or holiday.
In a snowstorm like this, you're not enforcing
Do
it
you
anyways.
accept, like,
We'll see.
veteran stuff from that?
So most of our veterans only put a flag on. They usually don't put anything else on. And the veterans cemeteries that are or any of the veteran cemeteries, if you put a Christmas wreath on, it comes off the day after Christmas.
This
So
is
they're like-
Harwich, though. This is Harwich.
I know this is Harwich, and we're not asking them to take it off the day after.
How do you deal with Memorial Day decorations?
Usually people just bring flowers for Memorial Day or stuff like that, and
Put up those stands with the, or maybe that's a New York thing. I
Yeah, they
know.
don't do that here. I have never seen any stands put up.
Questions?
For Memorial Day, what happens is Cindy and John and the Boy Scouts put out the flags.
Correct.
Question?
Other than
Go
from
ahead.
Dana, has there ever been any complaints on you removing decorations? Do you get any?
No, actually, people complain to us that other people's decorations are left up there until July. And they're like,
So you eventually remove them?
we have to remove,
Nobody complains?
yeah. But we want to put a date on them so that they know that by this date, we would kind of like want them removed, or we are going to remove them. What happens is the DPW now removes them all, and then they put them behind the DPW barn for like months, waiting for people to come, because then people will come and say, I left something, and that ribbon meant a lot to me, and I want the ribbon back, or whatever. So, I mean,
The date isn't going to change that.
Right. Okay. We'll move on from the
Software.
rules. So, the Arboretum software, so, I had met with, this company, it's called Cemetery 360. They do like Google Map for your cemetery. So they'll go in and they'll take pictures of all the trees, all of the important figures that we want done, memorial stones within the cemetery. And then what they'll do is they'll map the whole system with GPS coordinates. So if somebody went to the entrance of the cemetery, they would click on, I want to see whatever, the mimosa tree, which is in your photograph right here. And it would actually Google walk you from the entrance to that tree. If you put in, I want to see Jimmy Marceline, it'll walk you from the entrance to Jimmy Marceline's grave. It'll have what his stone looks like, and then some information about him, biographical information. There's another component of that. There's another company that comes in, and they will take all of our data from all of the burials that are within the cemetery. They'll put it in a searchable database, so that if somebody comes to visit anybody's grave, they can find anyone located within the grounds. They're not only doing the cemetery property with the Cemetery 360, but also the 7-acre conservation piece, which is part of the Arboretum project. So if somebody wanted to go on the trailway system, they'll be mapping that out. If they're in the trailway system and they get lost, they could log into it and it'll walk them out. So that's what the software does.
Will it identify Civil War veterans?
It will identify anything that we put in there. So we do have a lot of Civil War veterans that are already indexed. Ones that haven't been indexed, well, hopefully we'll be able to get them indexed as well. There are a couple of the tours that we want to set up originally in there is women. There's a lot of famous women that are buried there, the first woman of jazz. There's a couple gentlemen that worked on the Apollo missions to get the spacecraft back here. So we want people to know about the different historic people that are buried within the Arboretum property, as well as all of the plantings in the gardens that are there.
Former finance committee member?
Yeah.
Former Board of Selectmen, I believe, are buried there as well.
I'm going to get one of those glass ones so people can just see me whenever they want.
I'm working with a lot of
Something
people
like a
on this
shower
project, so there's a lot of people from the Historic Society are helping me with a lot of the history on different people, and it's actually a pretty,
And the cost is $30,110, and the finance committee so far has approved that.
okay, thank you.
What was the grant for, was the other question that came up?
So
the
I am,
other day?
I'm also writing a grant, and there
Thank you.
is quite a few other people writing the grant with me. It's pretty extensive. What it is I had gone and met with the grant writers in Barnstable, and they're in the Barnstable County Complex, and they work for the county, and they want to write a grant.
Resource development.
Thank you. So they just had received a grant for Provincetown to create a park system down there for them for $500,000. When they got my need statement for our Arboretum project, they want me to apply for that grant. They said that our criteria meets over 100% of what that grant is written for originally, and Provincetown wasn't even close to meeting all the criteria, and they got it for them. So they're writing that grant with me, as well as a couple people on the Conservation Trust. Amy Ozowski and a couple members of our community are involved in that grant. So what it'll do is it will create even more information about here, about planting different trees, the environmental impact. It has a 10-year plan on studying all of the infrastructure within the cemetery, improvements for the cemetery, as well as improvements for the conservation piece, following all of the plants, animals, and anything within the perimeters of it. It's an environmental impact and learning grant.
Thank you.
That's just the first step to getting that, though.
And the total on that is?
The total on that grant is $500,000, yeah.
Very good.
That's great.
Other questions?
One question.
Yeah.
On the Arboretum project itself, you mentioned 30,000. That covers all the cemeteries, right, Robin?
It is, well, it's, in addition to that, we will be, when they come in, they're gonna charge us an additional $7,000 to do the rest of the cemeteries, if they come in here to do that, the original $30,000. So out of our revolving account, we are spending that additional $7,000, because we didn't think it would be fair that Tip O'Neill's grave wouldn't be able to be seen because he's not in Island Pond. So it's an additional cost.
And then, you know, we've talked, and in reading the agreement with 360, there's 3 years of software maintenance.
Correct,
Close
so,
to $5,000 a year.
that is correct.
So that's $15,000.
That is correct. So the software is they create the online mobile app, which will be on your phone, and all of the data and all the images of all the stones and all the stuff that we put on there, they host. So it's like a website on a tablet or a phone, and the cost of that is a yearly cost, yes. And I think this software will actually help with my job, only because when people come here in the summertime, I don't know how many people know that they're doing their genealogy, and I probably field at least 4 or 5 questions a day from people calling me, asking me how to locate somebody. And right now, we don't have that ability. We don't have an online search, and this would be our online search thing. And they can put a link to it right on our own webpage, on our town website. So if somebody comes in and says, "Where is Tip O'Neill buried?" You would type in Tip O'Neill, he would say he was buried in Mount Pleasant, and it would actually zoom in on the 360, and it would show him exactly where he's buried.
I have a question.
You have a question?
So that's so interesting about being able to put it on the town website. Can you then, and maybe for expanded monies, but put other information in? Because I know at MIAA, we saw a company that was providing an app and all the different information in the town. Could even, it could even update you on beach parking. It could all these different pieces and link to the town website as well.
More real time.
Yeah.
We have,
So I'm just wondering if they might have that ability it would obviously be additional monies, but.
we have 15 memorial squares, and we have parks, and we have conservation land, and all kinds of things.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool project. The 2 companies that have theirs up and running right now are Mount Auburn and another cemetery that's in New York. And I've already tested the Mount Auburn one and shown it to quite a few people, and they're very impressed with the way it handles. So if anyone wants me to give them a demonstration, it's on my phone, so it's pretty cool.
All right, any other questions? Hearing none, thank you very much.
Brooks Library is up next.
It's page 306.
Imagine if you could say like beach.
Pet cemetery?
What do you,
What beaches are open?
excuse me, hold on just a second. I think I
Robin,
have a
you may
question.
not be done yet.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry.
You want to talk about the articles? Do we want to talk about the articles here, or? Yeah, okay, so why don't you come back, we're gonna talk about the articles.
Well, she
thought you were
said she
gonna
was
do
going to
a
go in order.
separate
She went the
for,
first two and she missed
end?
the pet cemetery.
I thought you were gonna have a special meeting on that. but
Yeah, I
Oh,
thought so
okay.
too.
Yeah,
That's-
I thought that's what I heard.
Then
That's-
wait.
Yeah, it's not budget.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
not
then wait.
budget related, right? No.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a couple hours.
This time, hurry
Yeah,
up.
that's,
Yeah,
that's
go,
not-
go, yeah.
It's not gonna be fun.
No,
not
the
budget
way she said
related.
she's gonna do it in sections.
We're
so,
just
you know,
getting
the third
an
section.
exercise, up and down.
That's what,
That could be a big mistake.
Right.
Page 306.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
afternoon, Jess.
Lenny Hewitt, I'm the library director at Brooks Library. So our budget, total combined budget of salary and wages and expenses for fiscal '20 is $990,340. It's a 4.2% increase. That request is $26,757 over our projected fiscal year '20 municipal appropriation requirement. So there's no danger that the town would not be certified, and we can maintain our library certification. I'll just start with expenses. Do you want me to go through the lines? I'm not,
Oh, if you wanna just give the, I mean, as I see it, the total expenses are up $8,000. If you have some big contributors to that you wanted to talk about, or
Okay.
any reductions that have come to help offset something?
okay. One of the, so our gas line looks like it's gone up quite a bit. It shows as a 15.2% increase. However, it's really a 5% increase over what we actually spent in fiscal '18. We've been bringing that line down, and too much apparently, because what we had last year, what we spent last year was $11,000 more than this year's appropriation, so we use the what our actual expenditure and increase the 5% on that. That way we won't have to come in for a reserve fund transfer if it's a colder year. All right, let's see. So some of these are fairly small increases in actual numbers. Our professional services line, that's line 5309, is up 2.7%. That's an increase of $1,298. There's three components in that line: clams and our integrated library software. Library software, just specialized programs that we use, and assistive technology. So our clams membership has gone up 3.1%. So basically that is it's $1,251. That's accounts for the increase in that line.
Yep.
Let's see. Our educational supplies line is up 2%, it's $3,025. That's materials, books, audiobooks, videos, periodicals, all the resources that are used by patrons. And it's part of the state aid certification that a town of our size spends 16% of the appropriation. And so to keep the cost down, you are allowed to take out longevity as a personal benefit. I guess they don't want towns being penalized because they give some benefits like that to employees. So I calculated that 16% after taking out the longevity, which is, there's $17,700 in longevity. So that, brings it down a little bit. Let's see. Not sure if there are other large salary lines, expense. Unless there are other expenses you wanted to talk about, I'm not
No.
really
The
seeing others.
salaries?
Okay, on salaries. We have, salaries is up 4.61%, and there may be, I've just realized there may be something missing here from our salary line. I was provided a copy of the personnel bylaw for the managers November 28th by the assistant town administrator, and but I understand that may not be accurate, that the SEIU, the managers union, received their pay ranges were adjusted, is that correct? And so anyway, I may not have the right pay rate in for myself, but I don't know what it is. I don't have the new chart.
But the the SEIU is not, you're a non-union employee,
Sure.
so.
But the personnel bylaw manager's rate the compensation plan's always been identical. Is it not anymore? I mean,
Maybe
I
you
see.
figure that out.
We'll double check.
I
to
see
make
that
sure.
some have been submitted that way, so I
Rather
don't
than
know.
continue a
Just raising
discussion
the
about
issue.
your own pay, we'll
Yeah,
let
yeah, I
you
know,
two
I don't
figure
want,
it out.
sure, thank you. All right, so we have 9, well, there's a 2% cost of living. We have,
Yep.
we have 26 staff members, which sounds like a lot. It's 11.8 full-time equivalents. We have 7 full-time and 19 part-time. So we have 9 step increases and 8 increases in longevity in that. 1 position's being reclassified, I'll talk about in a minute, and the other thing that happened this year was our pay rate, our library assistants, these are staff members that work regularly scheduled less than 6 hours a week, and substitutes. So they are in the personnel bylaw, they're not in a union, and those part-time year-round salary plan had not changed in several years. So in order to keep pace with, the different increases in minimum wage, it was changed. So their rate was changed this year, and that's went up, it's a total of $1,000 for the year for all of those budgeted hours. And I gave you a spreadsheet that's got details on that and shows you who's getting step increases in longevity. There are a couple changes we're making on our organizational structure, but there's no increase in the number of positions or in the total staff hours. And so no additional funding is required. The first is that our admin assistant is being upgraded to an executive assistant, and that's based on her duties and responsibilities and consistent with other changes in other town departments. That position oh, I'm sorry, jumping ahead. The second thing is, we have a vacant 12-hour senior library technician position. So we are not going to fill that, and we are redistributing those hours. 5 hours are going to the executive assistant, and that is because we have not, we're like the only multi-person town department that's not had a full-time administrative support position. We really need that. We've needed it for a long time. There's just, I mean, with the volumes of the transactions for accounting and all the administrative, just variety and scope of what the person does. We really need that. So there's no additional entitlement to benefits because it's already 30 hours. 6 hours of that vacant 12-hour position will be redistributed for Saturday coverage by a library assistant. So it's a lower graded position and it saves us some money. And the net result of that is a reduction of $3,317 in our fiscal '20 request, and 1 hour per week of staffing. That's if you look at the packet that I submitted, page 7 and 8, at the bottom of page 8, it's got the little spreadsheet where you can see how the calculations were done. All right, so our top budgeting priorities for fiscal '19, really that organizational change of making our administrative position full-time is really critical. We've been needing that, and we've restructured to do it without requiring more funding. And we have 2 articles that are also priorities. Article 13 it's included in the facilities maintenance and repair article, and there's $90,000 for sidewalk and streetscape repairs. And these are repairs that were identified in the exterior preservation assessment in 2015. So this work will complete that project. The project was reviewed by the Capital Outlay Committee, and it was approved for inclusion on the capital plan for fiscal '20. And the second article is Article 29. It's $21,322, and it's for purchase and replacement of technology, equipment, and software for the library, using funds repurposed from prior articles. Do you want me to? Do you have
No,
that?
the finance committee has already,
Oh, you looked at that, okay.
we've already moved to accept and adopt both those articles.
Okay.
The selectmen haven't got a position
Okay.
yet, but.
So, we had an article in 2013, which was $29,000 for library technology, and so it's been in use for 6 years, and we're finishing that up this year. And the goal was supposed to be that we would start increasing our line for technology in the budget some, and we didn't do that, just really to keep the budget down. And that's what we would like to try to do this year, so that if we increase the budget a little more each year, so it's not a huge increase at one time, but it would, and then we wouldn't need to rely on an article when this funding runs out. So operating budget doesn't have anything really that can be deferred, they're just routine operating expenses. The question about our revenue, our deposits to the general fund come from overdue fines and patron payments for printing and the homework center and the adult research station. In fiscal 16, we collected $7,092. In 17, it went down to $6,423. And in fiscal 18, $5,500. So there's a trend there, downward trend, and this improved electronic notification to patrons about their due dates coming up. There are emails now, that courtesy emails are called. You know, in the old days, you used to get a letter in the mail telling you something was overdue. Now you get notified in advance of the due date that, by the way, it's, you know, due in 3 days, so you can renew it or return the items. So, and last March, Clams got a really much better full text messaging service. And so that has really helped. And just people are getting more accustomed to going online and, you know, just checking their patron account and renewing it. So we expect to see that to continue to go down. There's no changes in our fees are anticipated, but we still expect revenue to continue to go down. I will say, too, it's been 16 years since the Clams member libraries decided to standardize our loan rules. That means how long the items are out, you know, every library is the same, and also the fines. But there's growing unrest about that because half of the libraries are, well, there's a national trend to eliminate fines, but half of the libraries in Clams are association libraries, so they're not municipal, so that's income to them, so they don't want to give that up. And some of the municipal libraries have revolving funds for their fine money. So what I foresee in the next couple of years, there'll be a compromise that rather than eliminate fines, they'll probably be greatly reduced, you know, kind of split the difference. And so that would also reduce the amount we collect, if that happens. Let's see, I think that's about it that I have. You have questions?
Questions? All right.
No, thank you.
It? Done?
None, thank you.
Thank you for everything.
None. Thank you very much, Ginny.
Okay.
The library paint job looks great.
That's your
I know,
question?
it certainly does.
It's a comment.
Yeah, we did approve your sidewalk repair and stuff, Jenny. Is that, I just thought of it, does that work or in conjunction with all of, you know, Harwich Center development?
It's
And
been
you're
broken
not
out
doing anything
separately.
Okay.
It's been broken out separately because this project already existed. And it's brick sidewalk too, which is different, which I assume, you know, with the ADA compliant sidewalk project, if that gets funded, will probably be asphalt, I would assume.
Okay, but it will go, you're not doing anything that will not, it'll be redone when they figure out what they're doing out
Oh,
there?
no,
Okay.
no.
Thank
They're
you.
here to stay.
No, I'm good, thank you very much.
And I'm all set. Oh, now we have a question.
He had his chance.
What will be changed to asphalt?
Well, what I'm saying is, this project, our project, is to do the sidewalks, you know, they're uneven from the trees, and replacing the trees with something that's appropriate for that type of setting. So it's not included. What I was saying is, if the other project happens in Harwich Center, or from the community center to the cultural center, then that may be asphalt. I would assume brick would be more expensive, I don't know.
Yeah, this was part of the streetscape, so when the engineers looked at the building to paint, they also looked at the streetscape.
Yeah.
That was broken up into two pieces, so this is the second piece of that.
Yeah.
The other one is more ADA, making sure that we have the ramps right, whether it's blacktop or concrete, or maybe a
What- yeah.
combination of a little bit of both. But that's the
But the
Matt Hart.
sidewalks, the current sidewalks that are brick are gonna remain brick?
They're in this project, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, everything that's
Because-
on the sidewalk related to the
Okay.
library is
Yeah.
gonna stay the same.
Because you don't have to change to asphalt to make it ADA.
No.
Okay.
No, I was saying why
Yeah.
this one already is separate and staying that way.
I mean, you know, they just finished redoing sidewalks all over downtown Orleans, and most of them, they redid it in asphalt. I mean, meeting, Rick.
Other questions? Anyone? Thank you for coming.
All right, thank you.
I'll say thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny.
Just checking.
So, at this point, it's administration, so I'm
headache.
happy to do the administration piece. And what we have done, at least historically since I've been here, is all the budgets that were over 300,000 got invited to today. But if there are any questions on anything else, you're more than welcome to submit that, and either Sarah or I hopefully will be able to respond to those. I don't know if you wanted to have me take a minute or two and just go over the administration one, or?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna ask the finance committee to go over its own budget, the reserve fund, and our expense and salaries, only because we've been operating without a board secretary and that kind of thing. We're gonna make some changes in our own, so we'll do that separately and then present that back to you.
Okay.
So just so you know on that one, we're gonna,
Hopefully it's not gonna go up, right? It's gonna,
I'm sure the finance committee is gonna double, triple, no, we're not gonna go up, in my opinion, but,
I just,
I'm
we set
looking at it,
numbers,
I'm
so
looking
anything
at
that
it
goes
down.
up needs to be, revenue needs to be
Yeah,
identified.
I'm trying to get a down number, but we'll see.
And maybe just, because the question was asked earlier, on page 163 is the vacation and sick leave buyback numbers. So you could see it's for the police and fire are identified in that. And the administration is actually fairly flat on the salary side, it's 1%. On the expense side, we did go in and modify some of the expenses, so we actually reduced it by 8%. So I don't know if there was any specific questions in regards to that, specifically, or if there's any overall.
I think so. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious as to why you took sick time buyback out of the department's budgets. What was the reason?
Yeah, like I said, about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we did it. What we were finding is on the, I think it was on the police side, when we had, I think it was 3 or 5 retirements all in 1 year, that they don't really budget for that, or if they do budget for that, it creates a spike in the budget. And I've actually, in different places that I've worked, I think this is the third town I've been in where they say, well, it's not really fair to have that spike in the individual budget, so we move it to a generic budget that puts everything in. The numbers are still the same, some number of people that are retiring, it's just, it doesn't create a skew to the number for fire or police. We just have it segmented off separately in this. So contractually, we're required to pay these fees, so these amounts. So we just put it off for accounting purposes to have it be separate.
Other questions? Overtime?
In which budget?
That one, is that 4,500?
I think really for administration, that would be for covering any of the additional hours that secretary will have to go in to cover meetings or what have you. We like, for example, we've been running short, so I have had Sandy is working additional hours. So when we run short, we're supplementing through overtime.
Okay.
I try not to use that too much if I can help it.
Other questions?
And all the same positions and everything, there's no, in case people see, the one thing that maybe we did advertise, Sandy Robinson has been with the town for quite a while. She has indicated a interest in retiring, so she is on a timeline. So what we're hoping to do is to bring somebody in, allow for a little bit of overlap, so Sandy can train the person, and then allow Sandy to phase into retirement. So you will see the ad, and she knows about it, and we're trying to sequence in. And we have been without Ann Stidel, who's out on a medical condition, and that we'll have to continue to monitor that in terms of where we go.
Other questions? We good?
Thank you.
Move we adjourn?
Are we at this point?
Whole bunch of
Let me
other
just
stuff.
ask,
I thought we had,
so going forward on Monday, you folks are tackling the budget or talking about the budget? Or you have also a couple of articles left to
we do,
vote yea or nay into the warrant, correct?
right.
And then, we've already had one stab at it, and I gave you a copy, but I'll get a copy to everybody on where we are with that. I know I've given it to Chris, but we're starting to vote and starting to keep track of things and stuff, and I think we have as many approved as we have no recommendation pending further information, but we're working it. We got about half of them at least started talking about. Other items, Don?
Yeah, actually, on that subject, as we discussed briefly at one of our breaks, there is, what the charter calls for is us to deliver a budget. It was based on the administrator's, but it doesn't have to be the administrator's budget, and it gets voted and sent to you. I don't see, with the interval between finally getting to sit in front of department heads to go through the whole budget so we could actually fully understand the implications of everything, and Monday, when we got to vote, I don't see that we could do anything other than if we want to change something, we can change, at least near term, we could change the total and say that we're looking at achieving this much of a savings or that much of a savings and send it off to you. There's no way to get to a specific number with specific line items by that.
And
It's just a comment.
I think from our side, we understand that, and I guess the question I would ask back to you as the policymakers, I mean, are you wrong for ignoring the charter, or is the charter wrong and needs to be adjusted? That's a discussion you can have separately and figure that out.
It's like getting mad at a parking ticket. That's a discussion for later. Right now, the zone is no parking.
I do think that, just in terms of the way it's been done, at least in the time that I've been here, is that the administrative budget usually acts as the place to start, and then adjustments are made, and we do budget amendment 1, 2, and 3
Right.
to make those adjustments, so I think
If you could just
we
do 3
understand
and get it to
prepare.
us.
Yeah, that's not happening on
But I
Monday.
do think the warrant book is out at the end of, has to be completed by the end of March, so having all these adjustments so we can go into town meeting with a complete plan would obviously be advisable.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. You don't want to go into town meeting
Right.
on a budget
many
and say, please
amendments.
refer to page 262, line item 57. It's impossible to make a motion like that.
With some of the votes we've already taken, there's gonna be some of that, but not on the budget, on
Yeah.
the articles. Anything else? Well,
Now,
Are you open for comments?
yeah, just, go ahead.
I'd like to make a comment and an observation, if I may.
You may, sure, this is the place.
Well, as you know, I'm a newbie, so I can say things and get away with them.
To a point.
Cameras are still running.
I understand that these
People still
budget hearings are designed to determine how much is going to be spent on next year's program and letting the taxpayers know that. What I'm not seeing is where we tell taxpayers what they're getting for their money. What are the program results? What kinds of performance measures and performance indicators went into defining those results? And where does that get reported succinctly? That is purely an observation. It may be something that we want to include on next year's agenda for the FinCom, just as a point of discussion. But I've seen that type of a model in other places.
I just know from a narrative point of view that the town administrator does try to highlight new things and more features in the budget. And this year as chairman, I'll do that in the budget message as much as I can, but you're right.
There's a lot of stuff in the annual report, but it's not what I envision as.
Okay, so maybe
Explain to
I'll just
taxpayers
ask
what they're getting
as
for
an
their money.
exercise that you put into writing the kind of stuff you're looking for, and then
Okay,
we can
I'd be glad to.
take that up.
Yeah,
All right.
I'd be glad to.
Yeah, I think if there's samples of it, I mean, I've done different towns and different budgeting, and sometimes places do what they call planned program budgeting, where you have the outcomes are very much built in.
Yeah.
Very unique in Massachusetts, not very many places do that. I think the only town I've ever worked in was Wellesley, and we just did that for DPW, that wasn't done overall. But I like your point that for $70 million, we need to tell people, here's everything that you're getting, in a more
In a
comprehensive
clear,
way.
succinct
That's
manner
if
where
it's
they'll
$70
read
million.
it.
Or 69 and change.
I'm
Don.
here to tell you, you're not crazy. I was a budget and program analyst for the federal government.
Yeah.
You're talking about more than just what are you getting for your money? You're also talking about program objectives and economies and management and whether they fell short of what their objectives were.
Depends on how
We
far
don't
you
do
wanna
that
take it.
currently, but you're right, a lot of other
And-
people do that.
You know, depending what route you go down will determine what kind of training department heads would have to get, and that kind of thing, so.
Well, for effectiveness purposes, is your money really being spent right?
Yeah, but I'd-
But if
We
you'll,
don't do that.
I'd
if
be
you'll
glad to
start
put
it,
something- sure.
we'll discuss it as a group and see where we go with it.
Yeah.
It,
Along, there's a line, just an observation, this is the first time back as a selectman since we moved the due date for articles and the budget back a month. At the time, the intent was, we were always asking the town administrator to do the budget in advance of when the governor released his budget, in advance of when the medical insurance came out with their number, which are sort of some major drivers in it. And so we moved it back so those things could, and so we didn't have to so radically change the budget later on in the process. But it didn't really mean that we should start reviewing everything that much later. I mean, there's no reason why draft articles couldn't have started coming in December, you know.
but that's a
you know,
policy thing.
And that's,
a-
you know, it's something we all need to look at next year.
But you brought that up, Dana, so let's just point out that there's also state statutes about how far before the town meeting you have to
Oh, definitely,
advertise. and
yeah.
There
We
is
can't.
no infinite wiggle room here. If it got wiggled at all in the charter, it could only go maybe 2 weeks. That's about it.
But, yeah. I don't have a problem with what you've done so far and what Chris has done so far. I'm just saying that some people do. Yes.
If we could, if it's possible to get the, we've had in the past a one-pager showing each department and what percentage their budgets went up.
It's in there. We have
The
4
one-sheeter's
pages.
in there? That
Yeah.
shows each town, each budget?
Yeah.
The summary page.
The summary
Summary
page
page.
is in there.
All right.
It's part of your
think-
warrant, appendix B of the warrant.
I think it's more than one page, but
It's
yeah.
4 pages, it's
Where,
not one,
where
it's
is it?
4.
In this packet?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've
find it.
I've mirrored his, and mine's down to 2 pages, so I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
He uses smaller print, I think.
Well, and I think if we could get a summary of the extra asks to the capital requests, paid for out of free cash, debt
Did-
exclusions.
If his is smaller print, we can set up a
It's all
kiosk
in.
to sell reading glasses.
Did you,
Chris, if it's in there in a summary page, I'll find it.
did you get my 3 questions on the sheet that I sent? On that summary page, it looks like your school budget numbers are the same for 2 years in a row, 17 and 18. Did you get that email? Do you
I
remember that?
did not.
All right.
I'll look. When did you sent that Thursday night, or?
I think I sent it yesterday.
Okay. I was actually out of the office
Okay,
yesterday. a
no
little bit.
problem.
And do you know
Anything else?
when we vote the school budget? The final school budget?
Actually, one of the things that the board needs to just kind of set up is obviously, between now and town meeting, your positions. So you have to kind of lay out through the chair, who do you want to have come in once the warrant's set? You know, also, there's about 10 citizen petition articles. So when do you want to have the petitioners come in? I think we've done a few drafts, Sandy and I, to at least suggest how we divvy it up, but it's really up to the board for when you want to have people in and when you want
And
to
the
vote these
and the
things.
finance committee needs a list of the petitioners so that we can contact them to bring them into our meeting as we need them. I'm not sure how they feel, but I don't think in our case we need the library that's
Three
been the same,
traditional
the 3
ones.
traditional ones, but maybe they want it where we've got some new people, maybe they do.
Because there's a lot
But
of new
I
ground
would
that's
like
trying
to
be covered.
get a list somehow of the petitioners so that, with their contact information, so we can bring them in,
We'll do that.
invite them.
Well, and I guess more specifically, if the board doesn't vote Monday night to support your request to give $175,000 in additional money to the school to
Out of
help
free
their
cash.
budget,
Mhm.
how quickly do they need to know that?
I think if you can make that known Monday night, that would be good.
That's what I'm saying, Monday.
Well, yeah.
I think if there's big items, so we have a chance to change. The thing that scares me is when there's a lot of changes made close to town meeting, I just worry that eventually we're gonna make a mistake. because there's too many changes made too close, and
Moving
we're gonna
pieces,
miss
yeah.
something.
I'm not gonna hold back a change, so if it's necessary because of that. I mean,
Yeah, I got you.
anything else we need to take up today? Very good day, we made a lot of progress.
His motion to adjourn.
I just wanted to just thank Linda for making lunches, so if people see, actually, our chef, part of the reason for doing that is just so people don't have to go four corners to the wind to get their own food, to have people here, just have it be prepared. So I just wanted to thank publicly Linda, the chef, for
And the
doing
morning stuff that was done, other than the coffee, was the finance committee's expense, so.
Oh, look at that.
And drive safe, I was
That
hoping
was-
that'd be more rain
that
than
was a
snow,
traditional
but
argument.
it's
The
decent snow out
the
there.
healthy snacks were from the.
Very good.
But that too is a traditional
We are adjourned.